Okay, so welcome to the Amy and Britta Show.
I
I'm
know,
Britta.
it's so exciting.
I'm Britta, and this is Amy. So, Amy, since you're first in our title, because alphabetically and then other things,
Yes,
um, can you tell us a little bit about your who you are and what you have to say about Advent?
sure. Well, I'm Amy, and I blog at themessymiddle.com. And I had lived in China for about 20 years as a teacher, and before that, been a teacher. And so the reason I got really interested in Advent and the church calendar is until this year, I have lived on the school calendar, starting from like when I was age 4. And this past summer, like it was the hardest summer of my life because my job is now switched to I'm not on an academic calendar,
Yeah.
but everything in my soul was saying, this is summertime, you should be resting or gearing up for the next year. And I was talking with my spiritual director, and she just said, Amy, I think you need to orient yourself to the church calendar instead of the school calendar. Instead of just saying, like, don't be oriented to the school calendar, something else had to go in its place. And so that's what got me interested in Advent and the church calendar was my soul needs a new orientation.
I hear you. I hear you.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm Britta, and I blog at brittalevant.com, and I am trying to find God's best in the mess. So that's what I try to blog about. And so I come from a varied church background because my dad was military and my husband's military, and so we've been to lots of different kinds of churches. And ultimately, what I found was we found a wonderful church that we love here in Arizona, which is where we are now. But our church does not observe the church calendar. And so I've realized how much I missed it. We had no Palm Sunday, we had no Advent, no Lent. And it was really something I had never thought about before in going to church. But now I realize that it was a rhythm to my year that I appreciated. And and then as I studied about it, I know Amy, you've been reading about it, and I read about it too. I learned a lot of stuff that I had never known, so I'm kind of glad to have had the reason to
Yeah.
study it. So to understand that the church calendar is a way um, to kind of experience the important events in the life of Jesus and the early church. So, so I love that. And so, can you talk a little bit, Amy, about the fact that we were talking before we started broadcasting about the freedom that we have to do this, that it's not something we have to do, but it's something that we choose to do. So, can you talk a little bit about that?
Right. And one thing I think we both discovered is there are a lot of resources out there, and a lot of is the first week this theme or this theme is the and just that there's great freedom that we there's not one right way to do it, but there's many invitations from God to orient ourselves, and so you and I are both kind of using slightly different resources, which on one hand could be messy, but on the other hand, I think actually that shows the freedom that you're going to read kind of your stuff, I'm going to read my stuff, we're going to have a conversation, and we just trust that God's going to take all this and weave it together.
Oh, and I like that we're covering twice as much ground that way too.
I know, see, yes, freedom and distance. That's
Very good. And that's kind of what we're doing here with
yeah,
our Skype call.
yeah.
Okay, so the other thing we were going to talk about today is the theme for the week. So the book that I was looking at talked about the theme for the week being hope, and the book that you've been using is, can you tell us about your book?
I can. It's the Circle of Seasons by Kimberly Conway Ireton, and the theme for this week for her is waiting, and just that active waiting in Advent. And honestly, I see waiting and hope go together because both are about something that's not yet here. And so I think actually they mirror each other well. That this is the first week of Advent, and we still have 4 more weeks. Um, and just to be really present, like what are we hoping for? What are we waiting for? And that ultimately it's not, did I get the right present? Did
Yeah,
this person, yeah, or is my house perfectly decorated?
right.
Are
Or
we waiting? Are we hoping for Jesus?
yeah, yeah, and I think that it's interesting. I've always found it to be interesting that in Spanish and probably so many other Latin languages, the word for hope and the word for wait are the same. So I love how that comes together, and I think that because those ideas do come together, that hopefully when you wait, you would wait with hope.
Yeah, yeah. Well, interestingly, Kimberly also mentioned it's the same in Hebrew. So maybe Latin languages got it from Hebrew. I don't know, but that even God Himself, that some scriptures can be translated wait or hope, and it's the same.
Yeah. Well, and I like the idea too, when you look at languages, there are other Hebrew words that if you look, it's the same, that we have multiple translations of,
Yeah,
or like dual translations like this. And I like to think that God's word just transcends, this idea, this
yeah,
important concept
yeah,
that we wait with hope transcends language and any other barriers that we would have. So this is the book. Okay, so I
yeah.
have actually have her book, and which I did. You see all my sticky notes. I really
Yes,
like.
I'm like, wow, that's impressive.
And then
Yeah.
not as many sticky notes, but this one is the one that I've been using a little bit more. It's called "Living the Christian Year: A Time to Inhabit the Story of God" by Bobby Gross. And
Okay.
so okay, so we were both talking about kind of how this theme is impacting us this week. So we are recording this early. So this is Wednesday. So we're midweek. And so far, how are you waiting?
Well, on my blog post on Monday, I talked about different things I'm waiting for. And one was that my blog redo would go live, and that did. And so it's
Today.
kind of like it's fun how when something does come to fruition and you get to see something. Because honestly, that started months ago. So that is exciting to see. I also mentioned how we had kind of a messy situation happen at our church, and it's going to be the sort of thing, it's going to be waiting for a long time, like just for healing to come, for resolution. So in that situation, I think I and others at my church, we're still kind of in that shock and raw grief. And it's just been really good to think about waiting, that we're not always going to be stuck where we are right now with this shocking, awful news, but that God is at work. That even if there's things I can't see and there's information we all don't have, and we have no idea how this is going to get worked out for people involved, for the church, big picture. But honestly, the idea of waiting and just this active waiting, we still have to go about our lives. Like, we're not just all sitting waiting. I'm doing stuff. I'm shopping. I'm doing work. I'm doing emails. I'm talking to people. But there's that element within my soul that God is at work, even though this is a big hot mess and I don't see the resolution's not going to come quickly and easily. So I think it was nice to see something very tangible in my blog, and then just the reality that it's going to be intangible, but God is still at work.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that um, that's the kind of thing that when that happens, if you don't have hope, and
Yeah,
then the
yeah,
waiting is, you can't really see past your current situation.
correct. Yep.
Yeah. So, oh, well,
How
so
about for you?
for me, I have realized that for a long time, I think I haven't lived as a person of hope. I've kind of lived my life because we had a series of, I mean, when I say a series, I mean like years and years, like 10 years of like one thing after the other, deployments and health crises and marriage issues, and just like it seemed like forever. I mean, it seemed like it was more than, and when I think about, we've been married 21 years. So when I think about it,
Oh,
the majority of the time that we've been married, we've had some sort of like crisis. I mean,
right,
but the really extreme time was like a really long time. And so
right.
it started to feel like it would always be this way. And so that sort of trained me to be waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting
Mm,
for a bad thing to happen, not wanting to get my hopes up about anything. And without knowing it, this has kind of been sort of a subtext in my life. And I think that I've really realized that this is just not a biblical worldview. I mean, this is
yeah,
me trying to patch like my experience into what I know about God, and see how I can make it work, and it doesn't work because
mm,
it either makes me wrong or it makes God wrong, and we know the answer to that, right? So this awareness that like, wow, I need to live as a person of hope. And what that does for me is it's kind of come at a crossroads for me where a lot of things are, I've got things coming up. My husband's retiring from the military. We've got like big things coming up, right? And things that I could really legitimately worry about.
right,
And
right.
and and so I've been trying to, like, quell those feelings, push them down, push them down. But what I haven't done is just like give the burden to the Lord. And so this week has come at the perfect time. This idea, it is waiting, but this idea for me, I needed to know more about the hope.
Yeah.
And so, like for me, just to remember, where is my hope? My hope isn't in how my husband's retirement goes, or how our move goes, or do we
Right.
settle in the right place, or are all of our unresolved relationships with, friends and family and all of that resolved perfectly. My hope is not in any of those things. My hope is in Christ, which that is not going to change. And so that's been a good reminder, this constantly going back, and instead of obsessing and going back to the bad
Yeah.
places, I've been trying to, when I start that trip, like come back to the hope places.
Yeah.
And man, it's such a difference.
Yeah.
But
It
it's a
really does
it's a
make a difference.
retraining, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
God is renewing my mind in a
Yeah.
new way. So,
Well, and for me to start to think like this is the beginning of the year, like that's a really different thought to think
yes.
here, end of November, beginning of December, this is the beginning of the year. Yeah. So it's that retraining.
Well, and I thought, I actually had this little Facebook interaction with a friend of mine, and I'm in a workout group, an exercise group, because I've always struggled. I hate exercising. I hate it, hate it, hate it. And I hate eating right. Like, I want to eat whatever I want when I want it. Like,
Mm,
that's what I want to do. And so, dieting and working out were always in like the bad column. But I want to learn to love to be healthy instead of loving food or loving being lazy. And so it's been a struggle, but it's interesting, this idea that the new year starts now has
mm,
been wonderful, because I realize that with eating and exercise and so many other things, like in my mind, I have put them off till after Christmas. Like, I'll start
right.
that after Christmas, and in a way you're sort of held hostage by Christmas.
Yeah.
Like, nothing good can happen until after Christmas. Like, we have to, anything you're going to do that's healthy, or that's, smart, or whatever, or reboot things, it has to be after Christmas. And this whole idea of like, hey, no, it starts now.
Yeah.
Like, Christmas is it's down the road, but right now we're in Advent. We're the coming of Christ. He's come into our lives to make us new. And so it starts now. And so that's
Yeah.
been wonderful also.
Yeah.
Very counterculture. It makes me
I know, does it? I know. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah.
it,
This is real. This is the real story.
it feeds the little rebel in me, but in a good way. So, but anyway, okay, so I don't know, like, is that pretty much what we were wanting to that's pretty much all we
Yeah,
were going to
I
talk
think
about
that's it. So
this week.
just everyone, let us know how your week's going, and we'll tune in next week and go with week 2 of Advent.
Okay, and so next week we're talking about prepare,
Sure.
and now I got to think about it. Oh, I can't remember. Now, I had all this down really good. Prepare and
Don't
okay,
worry, it'll be a surprise.
it'll be a surprise.
Yeah,
Woohoo!
it's okay. It's all good. It's all
They'll
good.
have to wait.
They'll have to wait to find out. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, well, so we're going to do another video like this next week, and then for the rest of Advent. And if we are enjoying it and you guys are enjoying it, we'll do more after that. So,
Sounds great.
okay,
Thanks,
good.
Britta.